Prof. Poppy, izin, apakah bisa kita mulai saja, Prof, atau bagaimana, Prof?
Saya ikut panitia aja, Pak Ferry sama Pak Heri.
Okay, so now we have around 58 participants, and I believe the number will increase again. So Alicia Tahir will be the moderator, and then Assalamualaikum to everyone. Hope everyone is doing great. And Prof. Poppy, thank you so much for joining us today, and colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will have a very important session, Indonesia economy and then regional integration. Actually, it's two topics at one. Indonesian economy and then regional integration, because on my interaction with government officials, with journalists, it seems that not so many Pakistani know about the current economic condition of Indonesia. Not so many people here know that we are a member of G20 and now we are applying for OECD. That's one thing. And on the other hand, we need to engage more here to know about the ASEAN, because ASEAN is a powerhouse. It has a great economic growth, and it's also a good market. So hopefully today you will learn a lot from the session, and I believe you will have and I wish you all a very productive and insightful session. So Bu Poppy, that will be from me, and then I return the floor to Ibu Alicia Tahir as the moderator, please. Alicia Tahir, are you with us? Oh, I think she's getting ready. You're still muted, Alicia. Please, I give the floor to you, Alicia.
I'm Alicia Tahir from Lahore College of Women University and from the Department of Gender and Development Studies. Today we have Dr. Winanti from Indonesia. She is a professor of international relations, faculty of social and political sciences, University Gajah, Mada. Her research interests cover global and regional trade relations in global political economy, conflict and the political economy of natural resources and extractive industries, Indonesia's economic diplomacy, and South-South cooperation. She holds a PhD in politics from the University of Glasgow and 2 master's degrees, an MSc in international political economy from the LSE and an M.PP from the KDI School of Public Policy. Her recent publications include State Capacity in Energy Transition, Localizing Global Norms into Extractive Industries, Resource Nationalism, Regulatory Framework on IPR in Indonesia, Indonesia-Australia Trade Relations in the Indo-Pacific Era, and Indonesia South-South Cooperation. We welcome you, Dr. Poppy Winanti, for this online internship program session for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alicia, for a very warm introduction. Good afternoon, Pak Ferry. It is really good to be here. If I'm not mistaken, this is like the 4th time, isn't it, to have this online?
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm so
Correct.
happy. I remember that I was invited since the beginning. So this is, I think, the 4th time for me to be a speaker for this occasion. So I hope that we can have a good discussion this afternoon. As Pak Ferry mentioned earlier, I would like to share with you the Indonesian context in terms of Indonesia economy, and also we will discuss related to the regional integration using Indonesian experience. As Pak Ferry mentioned earlier, that what we have in Indonesia, I think despite the fact that we're in terms of the geographically speaking, we're the largest country in Southeast Asia. However, it seems that the not many people really know about Indonesia, what we do, and then what sort of like role that we are taking in terms of the global engagement. So let me share my PowerPoint presentation. Hold on a second. I hope that, okay. I hope that you can see my presentation, yes? Hold on a second. Okay. Okay. As I mentioned to you earlier that I would like to discuss Indonesia economy as well as the regional integration. Okay. So I would divide my presentation into several sections. The first thing is discussing the Indonesia's economic feature to let you know what sort of like Indonesia's most commodities for export and who are the best or probably the most important trading partners for Indonesia in order to give you a sense the Indonesia's economy. And then I'm going to also introduce the proliferation of what we call as the regional trade agreement, and then Indonesia's experience in dealing with this issue. The first thing is we can see that the Indonesia's economic feature, based on the Observatory of Economic Complexity, Indonesia is currently the 16th economy in the world in terms of the GDP, and Indonesia is also 26th in terms of the rank in total export, and Indonesia is 27th in the world in regard to the import. And in terms of the per capita, Indonesia is 114 economy. Then Indonesia is also considered as the one of the most complex economy based on this Observatory of Economic Complexity. What does it mean? It means that Indonesia is having quite diverse in terms of the commodities, both for the export and also for the import. So what we have, Indonesia's top exports, as you can imagine, it's sometimes it's coal, sometimes it's palm oil. So it depends on the data. So every year we can see that the best or probably the top export for Indonesia is either coal or palm oil. And as you may know, I think with Pakistan, we are increasingly much more trading relations, especially in regard to these commodities as well. In terms of the import, Indonesia is still importing refined petroleum and also all the related with the fossil fuels, energy. We are still importing that commodities. And who are our best trading partners in terms of the export? We are, as you can see here, China is the most significant trading partners for Indonesia, both in terms of the export destination and also the import origin. And you can see from the numbers, used to be before the signing of the ASEAN China Free Trade Agreement, we have surplus in terms of the balance of trade with China. However, after the sign of the agreement on the ASEAN and China Free Trade Agreement, then our trading relations with China is significantly increased, but at the same time, we are also becoming more deficit when we are dealing with the trade relations with China. You can see here the top export destinations. Second to China is United States, and then Japan and India, and then Malaysia. If you can see here now, the U.S. With the under the Joe Biden administration is not too aggressive in terms of targeting the trading partners, but Indonesia used to be under the Donald Trump. If you see this figure, you can understand that our trading relations with the U.S. is we are exporting more to U.S. than we are importing from the U.S. So in that regard, our trading balance is surplus. So that's why during the Donald Trump administration, there was a time when the Donald Trump administration is trying to reduce the import from Indonesia in order to improve their balance of trade with Indonesia. However, as you can see, due to that kind of policy, actually it's also hurting the domestic producers in the US, because what they imported mostly from Indonesia are the commodities that are used by the local producers in the US for them to be processed to be the end products in the US. So here we see in terms of the import origins, we are importing more from China from time to time. And then Singapore is also the second top import origins for Indonesia, and Japan, and also Malaysia and Thailand. So you can see here that we have what we call as the traditional trading partners. Unfortunately, Pakistan is not on the list. Yes, we have very limited. Yes, Pak Ferry, yeah, we have a very limited trade relations with Pakistan. But I hope that it can be improved from time to time. So that's the overview regarding the Indonesia's economy, to give you sort of like the the general information regarding the Indonesia's economy. So in that regard, we can see that Indonesia is still exporting what we call as the commodities or the raw materials. With that kind of condition, we also see that in order to establish our trade relations, we are developing not only bilateral trade agreement or trade relations, but we are also quite active in terms of the regional trade agreement. That also in line with what happened globally. So the proliferation of regional trade agreement is happening especially for the last couple of years. So in this context, I'm using the terms of regional economic integration in a very wide and very broad understanding. Regional economic integration, in this context, it's regional trade agreements, including bilateral and large plurilateral agreements. So when we have, say, for example, the bilateral trade relations between Indonesia and Pakistan, that also in this kind of broader sort of like definition, that is also included as a regional trade agreement. So it is not only bilateral, it is not only like regional, but also large plurilateral agreements. The reason why we see what we call as the proliferation of the regional trade agreement is because one of the reasons behind it is because of the multilateral trade negotiations or multilateral trade process under the biggest or the largest trade organization, which is WTO, is in the situation what we call as the stagnation. So since the establishment of the WTO back to 1994, we have seen that this international organization specifically focusing on trade issues are being stagnant. The reasons is because, or the evidence of the stagnation of the WTO is because after its establishment, we see that only few agreements can be concluded. And there are so many agreements that cannot be concluded because we see here that the change in the power relations. Before the WTO or its previous international trade regime, mostly it was dominated by the most developed countries or much more advanced economies. However, in the recent development, we see also some large developing countries are much more active in voicing the interests of the global South. So that's why it is much more difficult in terms of the trade negotiations under the WTO to be concluded. So we see that in my opinion, no meaningful global agreement can be concluded under the WTO. So that's why since then, there has been some stagnation under the WTO. Many countries, including Indonesia, are trying to find different ways of negotiating with other countries for them in order for them to achieve much more meaningful trade agreements. So that's why we see the proliferation of the plurilateral trade agreements or regional trade agreements. So as we can see here, the latest data from the WTO as of the 1st May of 2024, the WTO had received more than 600 notifications, and then more than half of them are already in force. So the data is increased quite, it's significant in my opinion. Every year we see the increase in regard to the notifications of the regional trade agreement to the WTO. So the data last year, 2023, in August, the notifications was around like 593, but now it becomes like 600, more than 600. So every year we see this kind of increase. This is the data that we can see, that as you can see here, that the very significant increase in regard to the numbers of the regional trade agreement. However, interestingly, is also at the same time with the establishment of the WTO early 1990s. So we see like the peak of, the RTAs. So that is in line with the previous statement that I've made regarding that the impasse of or the stagnation of the WTO has also influenced the proliferation of the regional trade agreement. Another interesting aspect, why countries are involving or engaging in regional trade agreement, there are several reasons behind it. Then again, this is also based on Indonesia's experience. The reasons why then more countries are engaging in regional trade agreement is also because more flexibilities, as we can see, negotiations under the large multilateral trade negotiations under the WTO is much more difficult because we have to accommodate all member countries. However, in the limited in terms of those parties that are involved in these negotiations, that can be achieved less or probably most likely to happen, the agreement, as compared to the trade negotiations under the WTO. RTAs is not only much more flexible, but also allowing what we call as the like-minded countries who have a similar interests to decide among themselves regarding the standards, the terms and conditions. So that's why they can be concentrated only certain sectors or aspects that are really becoming their own interests. So this is difficult to be achieved under the WTO because there was a tendency that many aspects, many sectors are supposed to be negotiated. However, under the RTAs, it is a lot easier because they have similar sort of like interests. So they would like to concentrate on certain aspects or certain sort of like sectors that they can set the standards that can be agreed among these countries. Also, based on the experience of some countries when they are engaging in RTAs, they believe that deeper integration is much easier to be concluded under the RTAs as compared to the multilateral level. Some data also shows that the RTAs is considered as a better venue for these countries to agree that the sectors or the matters that cannot be agreed under the WTO. So in that regard, I think that was the reason why then we see much more countries are more interested in involving or engaging in RTAs. Another interesting aspect when we're discussing the RTAs, especially the latest generation of the RTAs. For those who are familiar with the RTAs, usually the RTAs is referring to the establishment of the EU. However, recent development shows that there is something completely different with the one that the first generation of RTAs was concluded. The second generation of the RTAs, this is referring to the RTAs that were concluded especially after the establishment of the WTO. So there are several characteristics that we need to consider when we're talking about the second generation of the RTAs. The first one, mostly, as I mentioned earlier, that the inclusion, what we call as the beyond the WTO provisions. As I discussed earlier, that the WTO is having difficulties to have some meaningful agreements. However, the RTAs, after the establishment of the WTO, mostly they are able to conclude or to agree the provisions that beyond the WTO provisions. So in that regard, some of the RTAs, even they have higher degree of obligations for their members than that of negotiated under the WTO. How we understand why then some countries are quite reluctant to agree on something specific matter under the WTO, but they are willing to negotiate or even to agree on subject matter that that finally can be concluded in the RTA. There are two ways to understand this. The first aspect is the agreement regarding what we call as the WTO X or WTO Extra. What does it mean? It means that the RTAs are able to agree on norms in areas that are not negotiated or let alone agreed in the WTO. These issues including, say, for example, the inclusion regarding the rules of competition, the issues regarding the environment, issues regarding the labor, investment, and so on and so forth. This is one way of what we call as the beyond the WTO provisions. Another ways of implementing or the evidence of beyond the WTO provisions is what we call as the WTO plus. What it means, the WTO has these agreements. The countries or the members of the WTO agreed upon certain agreements. However, that similar agreements under the WTO are also negotiated, however, covering much more or greater or even much more what we call as the high standard than the one that is negotiated under the WTO. So you see the difference. The first one is even the topics or even the matters or the subject matters did not negotiate or were not negotiated under the WTO. So we call that as the WTO extra. However, the second way is those agreements are agreed under the WTO. However, the disagreements under the RTAs are having much more sort of like higher standards than the one that are agreed under the WTO. The examples for the WTO extra, as I mentioned earlier, is the inclusion regarding the competitions, rules of competitions, environmental issues, labor issues, investment, and so on and so forth. However, for the WTO plus, for example, as you may know, WTO has the agreement, say, for example, regarding the patent protection. Under WTO patent protection is protected only for 20 years. However, say, for example, under the RTAs, the patent protection is longer, not only 20 years, but it can be 25 or 30 or whatever that they agreed. So you see the difference, but then still it is puzzling because again, why then, say, for example, issues regarding labor, issues regarding environment, issues regarding the investment cannot be negotiated under the WTO, but why then some countries are willing to negotiate under the limited venue such as the regional trade agreement? So here is the examples of some of the initiatives. Say, for example, the used to be the Trans-Pacific Partnership or TPP, but now it becomes the CPTPP We have the TTIP and the RCEP. Indonesia belongs to RCEP. So you see all the first table, the table in above, all are agreed under this initiative. WTO is also having these provisions except for the investment. However, the second table, the lower, the below the lower table, shows that new sort of like subjects, new aspects or new issues that are not negotiated under WTO, but it was negotiated under either the TPP or TTIP or the RCEP. Even like initiative like RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which initiated by the ASEAN member countries. Obviously, Indonesia was part of it, and even the head of the negotiation or the chief of negotiation is from Indonesia. The RCEP, under the RCEP, there are several sort of like issues that cannot be negotiated under the WTO or probably failed to be negotiated under WTO, but it was negotiated under the RCEP. RCEP is the initiative, as I mentioned to you earlier, that initiative led by ASEAN, which include not only ASEAN, but also ASEAN trading partners, major trading partners. So RCEP is the...
Ma'am,
Yes?
I have one question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, ma'am, like what is the like abbreviation of like these words like TTIP and TPP?
Okay, the
Please tell.
TTIP,
Yeah.
okay. As you can see from, probably it's too small, yeah. The TPP is Trans-Pacific Partnership. It is it's the regional trade agreement used to be led by certain countries, including the US. However, then the US pulled out from this initiative. Then the members, including Japan, Malaysia, Vietnam, some of the ASEAN, but including the US, New Zealand, Australia. However, then the US pull out, then no longer the US. So TPP is Trans-Pacific Partnership. TTIP is Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. And then the RCEP is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the one that I explained to you previously.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So you see here that the initiative from each of these RTA is what is it like, including some of trade subjects or trade sectors that are not negotiated under the WTO. As you can see here, even RCEP is much more modest because it is not including environment or this labor. However, it is only covering some areas. But as usual, these agreements include trade in goods, trade remedies, trade facilitation, technical barriers, and so on and so forth. Next is the Indonesia's experience for these RTAs. As we can see here, hold on a second, I think. Oh, okay. As we can see here that the ASEAN, as compared to other ASEAN countries, Indonesia is quite active. This is the latest data from the Asia Regional Integration Center. As you can see here that only second to Singapore, Indonesia, as of this year, has around 44 initiative or involving in 44 free trade agreement. Some of them are already signed and enforced. However, some are still under the negotiations or probably consultation. And then some of them are already just the framework is just agreed, but then it has nothing significant is happening. So you see here that in ASEAN, most of the ASEAN member countries are quite active. And then we see also that some of them are involving not only in ASEAN RCEP, but also Trans-Pacific Partnership. That also includes the ASEAN as one unitary entity plus other countries. So this is not only, say, for example, Indonesia's bilateral free trade agreement, but Indonesia as part of ASEAN is having the agreement with other countries. So with this kind of situation, Indonesia is quite active. So the question is how then Indonesia as a developing country is trying to gain from this sort of like benefits of the regional trade agreement. This study shows that Indonesia has at least two strategies, what we call as the offensive and then defensive. The offensive mean that the Indonesian government, through this regional trade agreement, is trying to get the market access for Indonesia's commodities. Then the other strategy is defensive, meaning that as part of the consequences of being active in proposing or engaging in regional trade agreement, the Indonesian government is also have to think about how to protect the domestic market. So that's why the Indonesian government is also introducing several sort of like the policy that we call as the safeguard measures. So as we can see here, we see that the offensive strategic is that in order to get the market access, and then the defensive strategies is actually trying to protect domestic producers through the implementation of some safeguard measures. With the offensive strategic or the offensive strategy, in order to gain the market access, the problem is for the country like Indonesia, as I explained earlier, that we are quite diverse in terms of the commodities. We also have this kind of domestic market is quite huge. So that's why this huge and still open for business. So that's why the Indonesia's domestic market is still appealing for our own producers. So that's why market access or gaining market access in other countries seems less attractive for most of the Indonesia's producers. That's the problems that we are currently facing. How to ensure that the local or domestic players or domestic producers are also willing to expand their business globally. With regard to the how big Indonesia's domestic market is, then sometimes it is also becoming the obstacle for the Indonesian government to expand these domestic producers or domestic players. The second issues that we are also currently facing regarding how to implement these offensive strategies is that the emergence of what we call as the non-tariff barriers. As you may know that when we are engaging in international trade and then we are exporting our products, then our products must meet certain conditions that regulated under our trading partners regulations. So the most difficulties for Indonesia's producers when they want to expand their business globally is that we are facing or experiencing facing these non-tariff barriers that these products must meet the regulations and also met the conditions that applied to the foreign products that entering their markets. In addition to that, say for example, one of the most controversial issues that are currently facing by the Indonesian producers is that, say for example, the Indonesian products are not meeting the minimum standards required for the, say for example, environmental protection. So as you may know, for example, when we are dealing with the EU, and then when Indonesian producers would like to export or get the market access for the EU's market, then sometimes these products are considered not to meet the minimum standard that applied under the EU regulations. The biggest or probably the most famous problems or issues regarding this is the palm oil export from Indonesia to the EU that was banned by the EU because, or it wasn't banned, but limited because of it was regarded not meeting the environmental standard. Another way for Indonesian government, especially this is the IA-CEPA, is the Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, is the bilateral agreement between the Indonesian government and the Australia. As you can see as well, there is Australia is already considered as much more advanced economy. So that's why they have also certain standards that probably quite difficult to be met by the Indonesia's producers. However, the provisions under this agreement clearly stated regarding the obligations and the responsibilities for the two governments to improve the domestic producers, especially from Indonesia, to meet the standards that applied or implemented by the Australian government. So that's why that was embedded under this agreement for the regional trade agreement, which in my opinion is quite significant for a country like Indonesia. On the other hand, when we are dealing or we are opening our market and then demanding the access to the foreign market, then we also have to be ready to protect our domestic producers, because we cannot also close our market because that was part of the negotiations. So we have to open our market for foreign products, but in that regard, we also need to protect the domestic producers through what we call as the safeguard measures. So in that regard, we also have to implement how to balance between the competitiveness for the domestic producers with these domestic producers with these foreign products or foreign producers. So again, using the Indonesia's experience under the Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Agreement Partnership Agreement, what we have under this framework is agreed to have what we call as the regional powerhouse. What does it mean? It means that Indonesia and Australia, we have certain sectors that Indonesia and Australia are supposedly complementary. So Indonesia is supporting certain sort of like raw materials, and then Australia is also supporting this kind of idea with their own raw materials, but then it's complementary. Then the final products are sent to the third market. So in a way, using our own competitive advantage, and then it will become complement, then the end product will be sent to the other or probably the third market, such as to the EU or probably other markets. So I guess in that regard, we can see that among ASEAN members, Indonesia is quite active in these RTAs. As we discussed earlier, that RTAs obviously create what we call as the winners and losers. So it is very important for the government to ensure that the potential gains that we projected to gain from the RTAs can be distributed, because it can be distributed unfairly among the society or the communities domestically. Therefore, it should be important for the government to have how then the benefit will outweigh the cost for the Indonesian economy. However, considering that the process that is happening in the multilateral trade agreement under the WTO, it seems that the regional trade agreement will be much more appealing for many countries, including a country like Indonesia. I guess I would like to stop there. I'll open for the Q&A session, and then we can discuss if you have any concern or probably any issues. Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Winanti, for your time and guidance through this internship program session. We greatly appreciate all the knowledge and experience you have shared with us. Hopefully, we can continue to learn and work together in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pak Heri, Pak Ferry. If any questions, I'll be very happy to respond to the questions, if any questions.
Here we are having Sameen Yunus. He wants to ask something from you. Sameen, you are welcome to ask.
Can I ask a question?
Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Waalaikumsalam, Miss
How are
Amrin.
you, ma'am?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Ma'am, the session was very good. You gave a lot of interesting information. Now I have a question.
Yes, please.
What are the potential implications of Indonesia's economic integration for various sectors of its own economy, including agriculture, manufacturing, and services?
Thank you, Samrin, for your question. I think
Thank you, ma'am.
one of the reasons why then the Indonesian government is engaging in this regional trade agreement is understanding that there are so many challenges that we need to discuss and negotiate with our trading partners. So, say for example, as you mentioned, in certain regional trade agreements, we have specific agreement on the access for the market for the agriculture, for example. We also negotiate the access for the market for the manufacture, for example. Indonesia's is, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, that the commodities for Indonesia mostly from the raw materials, right? We are selling our palm oil. So this kind of regional trade agreement is very important to ensure that the commodities such as including the agricultural products are acceptable to our trading partners. So we are negotiating what sort of like conditions that can be acceptable from both sides. On the other hand, we are also negotiating that if then the foreign products are entering our market, that also those products are meeting the standards that the Indonesian government is implementing. So that is the benefit of having this regional trade agreement to negotiate the common or agreed conditions for the countries in order for the countries to improve their trading relations. I hope that I answer your question, Samrin.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. I have another question.
Yes,
From the
please.
perspective of both the countries, Pakistan and Indonesia. Ma'am, as we know, both the countries have friendly relations, but economic relations can improve the relations between the two countries. But in the very first slides, it was mentioned that Pakistan was not included in that list, but India was included. So I think what are the factors that are just showing like as a barrier between the trade between these two countries? Does the linguistic or any other barrier, cultural barrier that is existing between the two countries?
Thank you so much, Samrin, for your question. I think it's a very significant and important question. Yes, when I was first invited for this talk, like 4 years ago, I was also looking at the data, and I feel like, oh, it seems that our trade relation is not as what is it, as probably as significant as other sort of like, relations. So we have a very good relations in terms of the cultural relations, political relations, but then not representing into these trade relations. I think so many factors in that. Pak Ferry and Pak Heri probably, who are in charge for these relations in our embassy in Islamabad, probably can also add to this. I don't think any cultural barriers. No, sometimes trade relations happen most likely because of these countries are complementary. We need we need something that you offer, and vice versa, that you can offer something that we need. So it can happen. So I guess one of the homeworks is to ensure that we have, say for example, that the Indonesian commodities are needed by Pakistanis market, and vice versa, how to ensure that the products that are produced by Pakistan is also needed by the Indonesian producers. So that's one thing. And the other aspect, I think we can also discuss something related to how to improve the investment. The Indonesian state-owned enterprises now are becoming much more willingness to invest and to expand their business abroad. So the Indonesian government can also encourage the Indonesian state-owned enterprises to invest in Pakistan and vice versa. So I guess, Samrin, there are still lots of opportunities. However, again, to make sure that why then trade relations are happening between countries are the main preconditions, or the conditions are need to be met, is that these countries needed each other in terms of the commodities. One thing probably, Samrin, you may find it also surprising when I give you the data, how close Indonesia with Australia, but you know what? Indonesia is not even including in the 10 biggest top Australian trading partners. So that's why we initiate this Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership in order to improve the trade relations between these two countries. There are several ideas I mentioned to you earlier that those are the initiatives that are that are now develop between these two countries in order to make sure that even though we are neighbors, but unfortunately our trade relation is not as significant as we expected. Thank you, Samrin.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I got my point.
Thank you. Should we take other question as well, Alicia?
Does anyone want to ask something?
Do people raise their hands, I suppose?
Yes, Sarah Kasim, do you want to ask something from Dr. Popi?
Yes, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am. How are you?
Waalaikumsalam. I'm good. Thank you, Sarah.
Ma'am, firstly, I just want to took a moment to appreciate you for acknowledging us about such a important and such a, you can say that, acknowledging topic. So, ma'am, my question is like, in general, how has Indonesia diversified its economy to reduce its reliance on specific sectors or industries, like economically, like beyond the pandemic, overall, and in general, how like it reduces its the reliance on its specific sectors.
Thank you, Sarah, for the question. I think what we can see here is the fact that every country has its own sort of like competitive advantage. Yeah, so it is very important for the country to what is it to elaborate further what we have as our competitive advantage, so that can be as the entry point, how to improve and then how to establish the trade relations with the other countries. Indonesia is currently, even though I should say that Indonesia used to be only focusing on selling the raw materials, right? Including from the agricultural products, minerals. But then later on, the Indonesian government is trying to, improve our domestic manufacture capacity. So that's why we reduce our export only for the commodities or only for the raw materials. But then we try to improve into the end products, but not only for the raw materials. However, again, that kind of change in the policy is also receiving several challenges for our trading partners. Again, probably because some countries need our commodities instead of our end products. So, but then every country has the right, in my opinion, every country has the right to choose what sort of like path of development that they're trying to achieve. So Indonesia used to be only concentrating for producing the raw materials, agriculture, but then now we are moving towards to improving our domestic manufacture capacity. So that's why now we are reducing our export for the commodities, but now we are trying to moving forward in order to have what we call as the added value process domestically in order to improve our manufacture and our industrialization process. So how then it again, it depends on the resources that we have, but not only that, sometimes resources can be very limited, but also the willingness of the country to improve the economic and then trying to move from one certain sort of like situation or condition or stage to improving to a better stage. So that's the process that the currently Indonesian government is trying to do. I hope that I answer your point, Sarah.
Yes, ma'am, it is cleared. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. We still
Thank
have
you, Doctor, for sharing the frequency of Sarah. Now we have Zainab Kharat and Amos Malik. They want to ask something. You are welcome to ask.
Can I ask a question?
Assalamualaikum, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Assalamualaikum, ma'am.
Waalaikumsalam, Zainab.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, ma'am. Jazakallah. Thank you so much for this useful session. And I have a question for you. Ma'am, is there are any economic barriers for Indonesian students, and especially for those students who are freshly graduates and looking for new jobs? Is there any economic barriers for the students in Indonesia?
Yeah, thank you, Zainab. I think Indonesia currently is also facing what we call as the what is it, bonus for our demographic. Yeah, we have a quite huge numbers of the young generation, and as you may know it that in terms of the primary education, Indonesia is quite successful. for the last couple of years, we were able to achieve certain stage of, then our population is at least educated for their primary education. Now the Indonesian government is trying to improve not only for the primary education, but also higher education and especially those who are entering the university. But still, for a country like Indonesia, being graduating from university for their undergraduate is still privilege. It is only a certain number of the population who are able to achieve that kind of achievement. Let alone we're talking about the postgraduate studies, and then also masters and also PhD. However, what we can see here is the job market is much more competitive at this moment. So despite the fact that now the some people have much more education, however, the job market again is much more competitive. So in that regard, I think the barrier, especially faced by the Indonesian young generation, is not only to prove that they are able and capable, having their certain degrees, but also other skills that are needed by the job market. So, for example, if you are graduated from the university, but you don't have any experience in regard to, say, for example, organizational, managerial skills or social skills, that will be much more difficult for you to get your dream job, for example. So that's why I guess now the problem faced by the Indonesian young generation is not only to achieve certain degrees for their better, employment, but also to equip themselves for other skills, including what we call as the soft skills, in order for them to be more competitive in the job market. I hope I respond your question, Zainab. Yeah. Do we still have enough time, Alicia, for receiving two more questions? I think from Javed and from Irmash, if we still have time.
Yes, we have Amos. If he wants to ask something, he is welcome to.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Assalamualaikum, ma'am. Thank you so much for such an informative session. Actually, I'm a student of interior design from University of Home Economics. I just have a simple question. Like, how is Indonesia promoting sustainable development through its economic policies? Like, is there any renewable energy investment or any practices that promote efficient use of resources and reduce environmental impact?
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, I think achieving the SDGs, it's a very challenging for a country like Indonesia. As you may know, Indonesia is able to achieve certain sort of like goals. However, we are still struggling in achieving some other goals. As you mentioned, now I think, in my opinion, a country like Indonesia is also currently facing what we call as the like triple sort of like challenges. Yeah, the first is the regarding how we make our development more sustainable in terms of the environmental issues, and then how to achieve what we call as the energy security. And then last but not least is also how to prepare ourselves in terms of the post-pandemic situation. So for the sustainable in terms of the environment, now we are promoting the not only change in lifestyle, how to make more like aware ourselves aware regarding the issues on the environment. However, also we are proposing and implementing what we call as the economic circular, meaning that prolong the use of the products in order to reduce the waste. So that's why we are promoting these issues, because we know that we have to be care about our environment. Regarding the renewable energy, it is still also challenging for a country like Indonesia, because again, we still have problems regarding how to ensure the energy security, how to reduce the gap regarding the access to energy. But at the same time, we are now imposed to have much more sustainable in terms of the energy transition. So no longer relying on the fossils fuels or the source of the fossils energy, but we have to think how to transition from this fossils energy to more renewable energy. I think Indonesia is quite blessed to have, several potential sources for our renewable energy, like many like geothermal, wind, no water, solar power and things like that. However, it is still underused, so that's why I think it's a very important for Indonesia to really take seriously to move forward, not only securing the energy and reducing the energy gaps, and also especially regarding the electricity. However, we also have to think about how to fulfill that by implementing the some sort of like policies to ensure the transitions energy. So this we are still in the process of achieving those. Then we had the COVID-19, which then also another challenging for Indonesian society. I think during the COVID, there was we had to reduce many things, and then there was our economy was slowing down because of the limitation regarding the mobility of the people. So that's why now we are in the process of recovering, and then also trying to meeting the the target for the environmental and also for the renewable energy. Thank you, Jafet, for your question.
Thank you, ma'am. It's Amna Javed. My name is Amna Javed. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Is it the last question then, Alicia, from Irmash? Yeah.
Done with all the questions?
Assalamualaikum, ma'am. How are you? May I ask a question?
Sure, Irmash. Waalaikumsalam. Thank you.
Firstly, thank you very much, ma'am, for such an enlightening session. My question is, how is Indonesia preparing for future economic challenges and opportunities such as impact of AI, artificial intelligence, and automation?
Wow, yeah, thank you for your question, Irmas. I think what is it? The facing the current development due to digital transformation is also quite challenging, especially for developing country like Indonesia. Sometimes when we have this, discussion regarding, well, we are still talking about, a very basic very basic needs, but now we have already had to, think about how to deal with this artificial intelligence and things like that. We have this, now I think the government is also trying to figure out how to deal with this artificial intelligence. For me, as the lecturer, we are also facing a very difficult sort of like conditions. Then we are also dealing with the use of the AI for the education. In my opinion, AI for education can be very beneficial. However, we also need to be careful with some of the aspects that probably can also be harmful. But I'm quite optimistic person that the AI is supposedly to be used for the benefit of the education. Indonesian government is now, I think, in my opinion, is still trying to figure out how to deal with this issue. However, we can see the increased development of the use of AI in many sectors in our life, in education, in many aspects. So that's why I think, Irmas, in my opinion, the development of the AI cannot be contained, but it should be managed well. So again, I believe that we can still use the benefit of the AI for the educations for the long run. I hope I respond to your question. Yeah. Thank you, Irmas.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was such a nice exposure with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for clearing all the ambiguities of our valuable participants. Thank you for your exceptional support and guidance during this session. We are truly grateful for the wisdom and experience you have imparted to us, and we hope to have more chances to collaborate and learn from you in the future.
Thank you. Then good afternoon, everyone. Wassalamualaikum.
Good afternoon, ma'am. That's it.
Prof. Poppy, terima kasih banyak, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. Poppy, everyone for participating in today's event. Maybe just one thing to add. I think some of you asked about why we have more trade with India and not with Pakistan. So it's apparently that with India we have like comprehensive partnership agreement, whereas there are several liberalization of trade between Indonesia and India. And then with Pakistan, we're moving there. But right now, for the from the past 5 years, our trade performance between Indonesia and Pakistan is quite good. Like in 2023, we reached 4.5 billion US dollar, and in 2022, 4.5 billion US dollar, and in 2023 we reached 3.3 billion US dollar, and then after that, it appears that it is always surplus on Indonesian side. So some of the officials from the Pakistani side is trying to withhold the trade until they want to be more balanced in terms of the trade performance. That's why we cannot push further, because if we want to talk about greater trade performance, we need to talk about trade liberalization, trade facilitation, and many other things. So that's why we hope that in the future that we can talk about this matter openly between Indonesia and Pakistan, and hopefully we will reach the same level of cooperation between Indonesia and Pakistan. Hopefully that will add more information, and I hope you will learn something and you will get something, and then you understand about the issue on Indonesian economic and then regional integration. Mungkin itu saja, Bu Poppy, and again thank you so much, and thank you, Bu Poppy.
Thank you,
terima
Pak
kasih.
Heri.
Terima kasih.
Sehat-sehat, Pak. Ya, terima kasih.
Sehat-sehat, Ibu. Sampai ketemu lagi, Bu. Mari, Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.